Welcome to our deep dive today,
Yeah.
where we're tackling some pretty big updates to Social Security that could directly impact you.
Absolutely.
We've got some interesting articles here that break down new legislation,
Wow.
sometimes confusing payment schedules,
Oh, yeah.
and of course, everyone's favorite, the cost of living adjustment, or COLA,
Everyone loves that.
as it's better known.
Yeah, definitely a hot topic right now.
It is. So whether you're already receiving benefits, planning for that retirement horizon, or just curious about this cornerstone of American life,
Right.
I think you're going to find this deep dive pretty insightful.
I hope so.
Okay, let's start with this Social Security Fairness Act.
Okay.
President Biden signed this into law very recently.
He did, yeah.
And it feels like a pretty major development.
For sure.
What are your initial thoughts?
Well, this act specifically targets two provisions that have been, let's just say, controversial for a very long time. The Windfall Elimination Provision, or WEP, and the Government Pension Offset, or GPO.
Right.
For years, these provisions reduced Social Security benefits for millions of public sector workers who also happen to have pensions from jobs not covered by Social Security.
Oh, okay.
Think teachers, firefighters, police officers,
Right.
folks who dedicated their careers to public service, but were essentially penalized when it came to their Social Security checks.
Yeah, it's always seemed a bit unfair to me that someone who dedicated their life to public service would receive less in benefits.
I agree.
So this new act repeals those provisions, which is great.
It is.
But what does that actually look like for the people it affects?
It's pretty significant. We're talking nearly 3 million retirees
Wow.
who are now eligible for higher payments.
Okay.
And get this.
Yeah.
It's retroactive to January 2024, meaning they'll receive back payments too.
Wow.
One article I read highlighted how this impacts surviving spouses who were often hit especially hard by the GPO.
Right.
They can now see an average increase of almost $1,200 per month.
Wow.
That's life-changing money for a lot of families.
It is.
Yeah.
It's great that these folks are finally getting what they deserve. But I do remember reading some concerns about how this might affect Social Security's financial stability in the long run.
Sure.
Can you shed some light on that side of the story?
Absolutely. Well, the Social Security Fairness Act is a step towards fairness for many. It's true that there are concerns about its potential impact on the program's solvency.
Okay.
Some experts argue that by increasing benefits for a substantial number of people, we might be speeding up the insolvency of Social Security.
I see.
It's estimated that this act could move up the insolvency date by about half a year, which is definitely something to consider.
That's definitely a valid concern. It seemed like a bit of a balancing act.
It is.
Addressing an inequality now, but potentially adding strain to an already stressed system.
It is.
It makes you wonder what the long-term implications will be.
Sure does.
But before we go down that rabbit hole, let's switch gears to something that affects everyone receiving Social Security, the COLA, or cost of living adjustment for 2025. What's the news?
Well, the COLA for 2025 is 2.5%.
Okay.
Now, I know that might not sound like a huge jump.
Right.
But remember, this is applied to your entire benefit amount.
Oh.
So for the average retiree, it translates to an increase of about $50 per month.
Okay.
Bringing the average monthly benefit to around $1,976.
That's an extra $600 a year.
It is.
Every little bit helps, especially with the way prices have been going up lately.
Right.
I know a lot of people rely on that COLA increase to keep up with the rising cost of living.
Of course, yeah.
Speaking of, did I read that there was also a bump for those receiving Supplemental Security Income, or SSI?
You did. The maximum monthly payment for SSI recipients is now $967.
Oh.
A much-needed boost for some of the most vulnerable members of our society.
Yeah.
It's encouraging to see that Social Security is trying to keep pace with inflation to help beneficiaries maintain their purchasing power.
It is. I was also curious about something.
Yeah.
I know hitting the age of 70 is considered a significant milestone when it comes to Social Security benefits.
Sure.
What's the maximum someone turning 70 this year could receive?
For those lucky enough to be turning 70 this year, the maximum benefit they could receive is now a whopping $5,188 per month.
Wow.
It really highlights the importance of carefully considering your retirement timing.
Okay.
The longer you wait to claim benefits, the higher that potential monthly payment becomes.
That's a pretty compelling incentive to delay claiming if you can afford to.
It is.
Before we wrap up this section, I know payment schedules can sometimes be a little tricky to navigate,
Right.
especially with holidays thrown into the mix.
Hmm.
Are there any quirks we should be aware of?
The basic structure remains the same.
Okay.
Payments are still rolling out on the second, third, and fourth Wednesdays of the month, depending on your birthday.
Right.
But you're right, holidays can throw a wrench into things.
Yeah.
For example, last month, folks who usually get paid on the fourth Wednesday received their money a day early because of Christmas.
Oh, wow.
And SSI recipients got their January payment on December 31st because of New Year's.
It's definitely something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Especially for budgeting purposes. It's always a good idea to check the Social Security Administration website for the most up-to-date payment calendar.
I completely agree. It's best to be prepared.
Okay.
Speaking of being prepared, I think it's important to mention that all the maximum benefit amounts we've discussed, for those turning 62, full retirement age, and 70,
right,
have all been adjusted upwards thanks to that COLA increase.
Right. I almost forgot about that. That's a great point.
Yeah.
It's amazing how these seemingly small percentage changes can really add up, particularly when you look at it over the course of a year.
Exactly.
Right.
And I think it's crucial for our listeners to remember that these are just the maximum benefits. Your actual payment will depend on your individual earnings history and the age you choose to start receiving benefits.
You're absolutely right. It's so important to get personalized estimates from the Social Security Administration to understand your specific situation.
I agree.
Right.
And to remember that these numbers can change over time as legislation and economic conditions evolve.
Right.
It's a dynamic system, which is why staying informed is so important.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Now, shifting gears a bit.
Okay.
Let's dive into some of the historical context behind the Social Security Fairness Act.
Right.
I'm particularly interested in learning more about the WEP and GPO provisions and why they were initially put in place.
Sure.
Can you walk us through that?
Sure. The WEP and GPO were originally enacted in the 1980s with the intention of preventing what was perceived as double dipping by individuals who worked in both Social Security covered and non-covered employment, primarily public sector jobs.
Okay.
Lawmakers at the time believed that these individuals were receiving an unfair advantage by collecting both a pension and full Social Security benefits.
Interesting.
The idea was that their Social Security benefits should be adjusted to account for their pension income.
I see.
However, as time went on, it became clear that these provisions often had unintended consequences.
Okay.
Particularly for those who had dedicated significant portions of their careers to public service. It inadvertently created a system where public servants were essentially penalized for their years of service.
So in a way, it backfired on the very people it was supposed to protect.
In a sense, yes.
Wow.
The WEP and GPO ended up disproportionately impacting individuals who often had lower overall retirement incomes compared to those with solely private sector careers.
Oh, okay.
It inadvertently created a system where public servants were essentially penalized for their years of service.
It does make you think about the complexities of crafting these kinds of policies and the long-term impacts they have.
Absolutely.
I know you mentioned earlier that there are concerns about the Social Security Fairness Act potentially accelerating the insolvency of the program.
Right.
Can we dig into that a bit more?
Yeah.
What exactly does insolvency mean in this context?
Sure. To understand insolvency, we need to grasp how Social Security is funded. Essentially, it works like a pay-as-you-go system.
Okay.
Payroll taxes collected from current workers are used to pay benefits to current retirees.
Okay.
Think of it like a giant pot of money that's constantly being filled and emptied.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So where's the problem?
Well, the problem is that for several decades, more money has been flowing out of that pot than has been coming in.
Oh, I see.
This is due to a few factors.
Okay.
People are living longer, birth rates are declining, and wage growth has been relatively stagnant.
Right.
Which means fewer workers are paying into the system while more people are drawing benefits for extended periods.
That does sound like a recipe for trouble down the road.
It is a concern.
Yeah.
And that's where the Social Security Fairness Act comes into play.
Right.
By increasing benefits for such a large group of people, it does speed up the rate at which that metaphorical pot of money is being emptied.
Okay.
Some estimates suggest that the program's trust fund could be depleted as early as 2034, which is just a decade away.
Wow.
Well, the Fairness Act is projected to only shift that date by about 6 months.
Okay.
It still adds to the urgency of finding a solution.
It's definitely a sobering thought.
It is.
So what are the potential solutions Can this issue be fixed without resorting to benefit cuts?
Right.
Or raising taxes, which, let's face it, are never popular options.
The trillion-dollar question.
Yeah.
There are various proposals being floated around, from gradually raising the retirement age to increasing the amount of income subject to Social Security taxes. Some even suggest investing a portion of the trust fund in the stock market to generate higher returns.
Those are pretty diverse approaches. What are some of the pros and cons of each?
Well, raising the retirement age would certainly extend the time before people can start collecting benefits.
Okay.
But it could also create hardships for those who are unable to work longer due to health or other reasons.
Right.
Increasing the income subject to Social Security taxes would bring in more revenue. But it could also place a heavier burden on higher earners.
Yeah.
Investing in the stock market could potentially lead to greater returns.
Right.
But it also carries the risk of losses, especially in volatile markets.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Each option comes with its own set of trade-offs and would likely require significant political compromise to implement.
It sounds like there's no easy fix, which makes it even more crucial for everyone to be engaged in this conversation.
Absolutely.
And to understand the implications of these different approaches.
I absolutely agree. The future of Social Security really depends on us being informed.
Right.
And advocating for solutions that ensure its sustainability for current and future generations.
Before we move on, I want to address something you mentioned earlier. You said that even if the trust fund is depleted by 2034,
right,
it doesn't necessarily mean Social Security is going bankrupt.
Right.
Can you explain that a bit further?
Sure.
A lot of people are probably wondering what happens if that trust fund actually runs dry?
That's a great question, and it's an important distinction to make. Social Security isn't solely reliant on that trust fund.
Okay.
Even if it's depleted, there would still be enough revenue generated from ongoing payroll taxes to cover about 75% of promised benefits.
So it's not a complete shutdown, but it does mean potential benefit cuts down the line if nothing changes.
Exactly. And those cuts could be significant, impacting millions of retirees who rely on Social Security for a substantial portion of their income.
Right.
That's why we need to find proactive solutions now to prevent this from happening down the road.
Absolutely. It's all about planning for the future, not just for ourselves, but for generations to come.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about some practical tips for individuals. What are some strategies people can use to maximize their Social Security benefits, especially as they approach retirement?
One of the most crucial decisions you'll make is when to start claiming benefits.
Okay.
You can start as early as 62, but your monthly payments will be permanently reduced.
Okay.
If you wait until your full retirement age, which varies depending on the year you were born, you'll receive your full benefit amount.
Right.
And if you delay claiming until 70, your monthly payments will be significantly higher thanks to something called delayed retirement credits.
Delayed retirement credits. Can you give us a specific example of how that works?
Yeah, let's say your full retirement age is 67.
Okay.
If you wait until 70 to claim, you'll accrue an extra 8% in benefits for each year you delay, resulting in a 24% higher monthly payment compared to claiming at 67.
Wow.
So patience can definitely pay off in this case.
That's a substantial difference. What other factors should people consider when deciding when to claim?
Your health and life expectancy are key considerations.
Okay.
If you have a family history of longevity and anticipate needing Social Security for an extended period, delaying claiming might be the most advantageous approach.
Right.
On the other hand, if you have health concerns or need to access benefits sooner, claiming earlier might make more sense.
It sounds like there's no one-size-fits-all answer, and it really depends on individual circumstances.
Exactly.
What about married couples? Are there any specific strategies they should be aware of?
Absolutely. For married couples, there are a variety of claiming strategies to consider, depending on their ages, earnings histories, and individual needs.
Okay.
One spouse might choose to claim early, while the other delays, allowing them to bring in some income while still boosting the higher earner's eventual benefit.
So there's a lot of flexibility, which is great.
Yeah.
Are there any other key things people should keep in mind when it comes to Social Security and their financial planning?
A couple of things come to mind.
Okay.
Firstly, remember that your Social Security benefits are subject to income tax. If your total income exceeds certain thresholds, this is something to factor into your retirement planning to avoid any surprises.
Good point. Taxes are often overlooked, but can make a big difference.
And secondly, it's essential to remember that while Social Security is designed to provide a safety net, it's not meant to be your sole source of retirement income.
It's just one piece of the puzzle, right?
Exactly.
What are some other ways people can supplement their Social Security benefits in retirement?
Exactly. It's about building a multifaceted retirement plan. This could include things like employer-sponsored retirement plans like 401k, individual retirement accounts, IRAs, personal savings, and even part-time work, if you're able and willing. The more diverse your income streams, the more secure your financial future will be.
I love the idea of creating a multi-pronged approach. It takes the pressure off relying solely on Social Security and allows for more flexibility in retirement.
Right.
Before we wrap things up, I wanted to touch on one more aspect of Social Security that I think is often overlooked.
Okay.
It's not just for retirees, is it?
You're absolutely right. Social Security also provides crucial disability benefits for those who are unable to work due to a severe medical condition,
Right.
as well as survivor benefits for eligible family members in the event of a worker's death. It's a comprehensive program that touches the lives of millions of Americans beyond just retirees.
It's really a vital safety net for so many people. We've covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah, we have.
From the nuances of the Social Security Fairness Act and the potential challenges of insolvency to practical tips for maximizing benefits and planning for a secure retirement, it's been an incredibly informative discussion.
It has.
But before we say goodbye, I'd love to hear your final thoughts.
Sure.
And maybe a provocative question for our listeners to ponder as they continue their journey of financial discovery.
It has been quite a deep dive.
It has.
If I had to sum it all up,
Yeah.
I'd say knowledge is truly power when it comes to navigating the complexities of Social Security.
I agree. And sometimes that means looking at things from a different angle. Which brings me to a thought-provoking question that popped into my head while we were discussing the Social Security Fairness Act.
Okay.
We talked about the potential downsides and how it might accelerate the program's insolvency.
Yeah.
But what if we flipped the script?
Okay.
Instead of focusing on the potential negatives, we considered this an opportunity.
I like where you're going with this.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the challenges,
Right.
but there's always another side to the coin.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This act brings much-needed relief to millions of public servants who, let's be honest, were unfairly penalized for years.
Right.
It's a step towards a more equitable system.
It is.
And it could potentially boost the economy.
How so?
By putting more money into the pockets of people who are likely to spend it.
That's a great point. Increasing spending power among retirees could have a ripple effect.
Right.
Stimulating local economies and supporting businesses.
Exactly.
It's a positive feedback loop.
So what if we use this momentum to spark a broader conversation about strengthening and modernizing Social Security for the 21st century?
Okay.
We could explore those innovative solutions we touched on earlier, like gradually raising the retirement age, adjusting the benefit formula to better reflect today's economic realities, or even creating new incentives for private retirement savings.
I'm all for thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
We could also look at ways to make the system more progressive, ensuring that those who need it most are adequately supported.
Right.
Maybe we could even explore a tiered system that provides a higher level of benefits to lower-income retirees.
It's definitely a complex issue.
It is.
But I'm optimistic that with some creative thinking and a willingness to compromise, we can find solutions that work for everyone.
I agree.
I think it's important to remember that Social Security is not just a program. It's a promise. A promise to ensure that all Americans, regardless of their background or profession, can retire with dignity and security.
Well said. And fulfilling that promise requires us to be engaged, informed, and proactive in shaping the future of Social Security.
It's not enough to just sit back and wait for someone else to fix things. We all have a role to play.
Right.
So to our listeners, we encourage you to stay informed about the issues. Contact your elected officials and make your voices heard.
Absolutely.
The future of Social Security truly is in our hands.
I couldn't agree more. Let's keep the conversation going and work together to ensure that Social Security remains a beacon of hope and security for generations to come.
That wraps up our deep dive into the world of Social Security.
Yes, it does.
We hope you found it insightful, informative, and maybe even a little inspiring.
Until next time, stay curious.
Yeah.
Keep exploring and stay engaged.